Imagine a world where the most influential engineering breakthroughs weren't towering castles or heroic inventions, but the nearly invisible channels of water running beneath muddy roads, monastery floors, and village mills. In medieval Europe, the quiet movement of water shaped survival, dictated daily routines, and laid the groundwork for techniques modern engineers still analyze today. Yet most people have never heard how these unremarkable systems actually worked, or how they kept an entire continent functioning in an era defined by scarcity, disease, and constant environmental pressure. If you've ever wondered how ordinary people engineered stability without pumps, steel pipes, or advanced mathematics, or how humble ditches and wooden conduits sustained centuries of life and labor, this story will take you into the hidden infrastructure that history books often overlook. Stay with this video until the end, and you'll discover that the real secrets of the Middle Ages were not forged in battlefields or royal courts, but quietly carved into the earth by hands that understood water better than we do today. If you could wander quietly through the landscapes of medieval Europe, not as a modern observer, but as a silent visitor who feels the rhythm of the past, you would quickly notice something unexpected. The medieval world, often imagined as muddy, chaotic, and unsanitary, was threaded with surprisingly thoughtful systems of water management. They were not grand like Roman aqueducts, nor mechanically complex like later industrial pump networks. Instead, they were modest, almost unimpressive stone-lined gutters, wooden channels, clay pipes buried beneath packed earth. But they were everywhere, quietly supporting the survival of towns, monasteries, and farms. These seemingly dull systems kept people fed, mills running, fires controlled, and waste carried away. And although few people today think about them, many of their principles still echo in modern hydraulic engineering. Imagine you are walking along a narrow medieval road on a late autumn morning. The air carries a damp chill, and there is a familiar scent of wood smoke drifting from distant hearths. To your left, you notice a shallow ditch running parallel to the road. It isn't elegant, just a trench worn through years of maintenance and rainfall. Yet this ditch is one of the simplest, most enduring forms of medieval plumbing. Engineers still study such channels because they represent controlled runoff, a deliberate guiding of water so that it flows safely away from homes, storehouses, and livestock pens. Medieval builders understood a fundamental lesson: uncontrolled water destroys. It softens soil, undermines timber foundations, spoils grain supplies, and breeds disease. So even tiny roadside ditches reflect a larger truth. The medieval world depended on managing not just water abundance, but water movement. Follow the ditch as it curves toward a village. The settlement ahead is not large, perhaps 20 or 30 houses of timber and daub, each with thatched roofs and low, smoke-darkened beams. You might see women carrying buckets, children playing near the central well, and animals tied to simple posts. At first glance, water here seems primitive. Villagers draw their daily supply from the well, lowering a rope and hoping for clarity rather than cloudiness. But beneath this simplicity lies a great deal of practical engineering. Wells had to be placed carefully, often uphill from waste sites and downstream from latrines or animal stalls. The distance between the well and refuse pits was not guesswork. Survival demanded precision. One polluted well could cripple an entire village. Medieval people lacked modern germ theory, but they understood association. A fouled well meant sickness. A clear well meant life could continue. Many village charters even included strict rules governing where latrines could be dug, how often waste pits must be covered with soil, and how water channels had to be maintained. Some villages required communal workdays, specifically dedicated to clearing runoff ditches and repairing small bridges or culverts. It was dull, necessary labor, the kind that rarely appears in history books but shaped daily existence. If you continue deeper into the village, you may hear the distant rumble of a watermill. It stands near a slow-moving stream, its wheel turning steadily, its wooden paddles slapping against the current. For medieval communities, mills were technological marvels. They converted water flow into mechanical energy, grinding grain far more efficiently than hand-operated querns. The placement of the mill was never random. It required an intricate balance of water speed, channel depth, seasonal variation, and land slope. Engineers today still study medieval mill placement to understand how pre-industrial societies optimized natural resources with minimal tools. The mill race, the man-made channel carrying water to the mill, was often the most carefully engineered feature of the entire village. Workers dug it at a precise gradient, shallow enough to prevent erosion, steep enough to maintain flow. Large stones or wooden planks reinforced its sides. Some mill races incorporated simple sluice gates, the medieval equivalent of valves, allowing millers to adjust the flow. If the water ran too quickly, the wheel could be damaged. Too slowly, the millstones stalled. Despite the absence of advanced mathematics, medieval builders achieved remarkable precision through observation, apprenticeship, and lived experience. Now leave the village behind and travel toward a monastery, one of the true centers of hydraulic skill during the Middle Ages. As you walk through well-tended farmland and orchards, you eventually reach a complex of stone buildings arranged in a square. The walls are tall and thick, designed to protect both monks and resources. But what lies beneath and around these structures reveals a deeper story. Monasteries were masters of water management, out of both necessity and discipline. Inside the cloister, quiet reigns. The sound of chanting might drift from the church, but your attention is drawn downward, toward the stone-paved walkways. Rain that falls here does not simply soak the ground. Instead, it runs toward carefully placed drains that lead to underground conduits. These conduits, sometimes watertight and sometimes not, channel runoff toward gardens, kitchens, or storage cisterns. Archaeologists today still uncover these networks and marvel at how consistently they appear across regions. Even monasteries separated by hundreds of miles use similar layouts, suggesting that hydraulic knowledge spread through monastic communication as much as through local innovation. One of the most intriguing spaces in a monastery is the lavatorium, a communal washing area. Here, a stone basin, often circular, was kept full by a continuous flow of clean water brought in from a diverted stream. The water spilled gently over the rim into waste channels that carried it away. This constant flow prevented stagnation, reduced odors, and provided a reliable source of cleanliness rare in the medieval world. Engineers admire these basins today because they represent early examples of continuous flow design, something vital in later hygiene infrastructure. Just beyond the lavatorium lies an even more significant marvel, the reredorter, or monastic latrine. In many large monasteries, the reredorter was a long building stretching across the length of the dormitory. Dozens of stone or wooden seats lined the interior, all positioned above a flowing channel of water. Waste dropped directly into the channel, which carried it downstream. Though rudimentary by modern standards, this was a functioning sanitation system centuries before many cities adopted anything comparable. This system relied entirely on gravity and strategic placement. The latrine building was always constructed where diverted water could pass beneath it. The fall of the channel had to be steep enough to carry waste away, but not so steep that it eroded the foundation or caused leaks. In particularly advanced monasteries, builders even created secondary settling pits, where heavier waste could decompose before water flowed back into the mainstream. Modern engineers still study these designs when examining historical waste management and early ecological planning. The kitchen and brewery also depended on hydraulic ingenuity. Brewing ale safer to drink than water in many medieval communities required vast quantities of liquid. Water was drawn through wooden pipes from elevated sources, so it reached the brewery with enough pressure to fill barrels. Kitchens used similar systems for cooking and washing. The pipes themselves were rarely metal, as metalwork was expensive and corrosion-prone. Instead, Carpenters hollowed out long logs, sometimes joining several with tightly wrapped linen or tallow-sealed joints. These wooden pipes, though susceptible to decay, could last for decades when properly maintained. You can picture a monk inspecting these pipes on a chilly morning. He taps gently along the wood with a mallet, listening for hollow sounds that indicate thinning walls. He checks for leaks, which appear as small trickles darkening the earth. Repairs are simple: replacing a segment, applying pitch, or tightening bindings. Nothing about these tasks feels dramatic, but in their simplicity lies enduring engineering value. Modern sustainable water systems sometimes draw inspiration from such low impact. Easily repaired materials travel farther south into a medieval city, and you encounter a different relationship with water, more chaotic, more dangerous, but still shaped by ingenuity. Cities grew faster than their infrastructure, creating constant pressure on wells, conduits, and drainage ditches. Yet urban builders found ways to adapt. In many towns, certain streets were intentionally sloped so rainwater drained towards central runnels, open stone channels that carried runoff toward rivers. These runnels might double as places to wash clothing or soak hides for tanning. Their presence prevented flooding and preserved the structural integrity of timber homes. Cities also relied on piped water brought in from springs or hilltop reservoirs. These pipes, often wooden or made from lead, fed public fountains. Fountains were gathering places where residents collected water, exchanged news, and maintained a semblance of civic order. Keeping the fountains flowing required constant vigilance. Springs sometimes dried, pipes clogged with sediment, or connections froze in winter. City officials appointed conduits wardens whose sole job was maintaining water flow. Their reports, preserved in some medieval records, reveal a world constantly negotiating with nature. One advantage medieval cities possessed, often forgotten today, was the legacy of Roman engineering. In regions once under Roman rule, ruins of aqueducts, cisterns, and stone pipes remained visible. Medieval builders studied them, reused their materials, and sometimes restored parts of the original systems. Although they rarely matched Roman complexity, they absorbed important principles: redundancy, controlled elevation, and durable materials. The blending of Roman precedent and medieval resourcefulness produced water systems that, while modest, were surprisingly resilient. Continue your imaginary journey toward the countryside, where farms depended on small-scale irrigation. Simple ditches carried water from streams into crop fields. Farmers learned to rotate access, sharing channels in ways governed by custom rather than written law. Dividers, little more than wooden boards or piled stones, redirected water to areas most in need. These adjustments, made daily or weekly, mirrored principles used in modern irrigation: controlled flow, equitable distribution, and prevention of soil erosion. Shepherds and herders also relied on water engineering. They built shallow ponds or seasonal reservoirs called dewpens in areas without natural water sources. Constructed by layering clay, lime, and straw, these ponds captured and retained rainwater. Their survival depended on careful sealing, periodic dredging, and protection from livestock trampling their edges. These structures seem primitive, but represent a profound understanding of soil composition and hydrology. Some dewpens built in the Middle Ages still hold water today. If you pause and consider the full range of medieval plumbing, from monastic latrines to village wells, from mill races to urban fountains, you begin to see a world deeply shaped by patient, practical engineering. None of these systems were flashy. They were not built for glory, nor intended to demonstrate wealth or power. Their purpose was survival. They reduced disease, improved food production, created mechanical labor, preserved buildings, and allowed communities to function. Engineers today study these systems not because they wish to recreate them exactly, but because they represent sustainable design, minimal materials, low maintenance, long-term planning, and adaptability to local environments. medieval builders did not force the land to obey them. They worked with slopes, soil, rainfall, and seasonal rhythms. Their greatest tool was observation. This quiet engineering also reveals something about medieval society. It shows cooperation, the shared maintenance of wells, the communal cleaning of ditches, the monastic routines that kept systems functioning. It shows continuity traditions passed through generations, even without written manuals. And it shows resilience, towns and monasteries surviving centuries of storms, droughts, fires, and upheavals because their water systems, however humble, were dependable. As a modern observer, you might reflect on the simplicity and sustainability of these systems. In an era of global infrastructure concerns, the medieval world offers lessons in modesty and resourcefulness. Not everything needs to be large, expensive, or mechanically complex. Sometimes a shallow ditch beside a road or a log carved into a pipe can accomplish more than a sophisticated machine. And perhaps the most interesting realization is that these medieval plumbing secrets were never considered secrets at all. They were everyday knowledge learned by watching, practiced by doing, remembered because people depended on them. They shaped not just technology but community life, embedding cooperation into the rhythms of survival. So when modern engineers study medieval plumbing, they are not just examining old stone channels or wooden pipes. They are studying a worldview, a way of living that understood water not as a force to dominate, but as a partner that requires respect, attention, and thoughtful guidance. And although centuries have passed, these quiet principles still hold value, flowing through time much like the streams that once ran beneath cloisters and villages, sustaining life in ways most people never paused to notice. Thank you for spending this quiet moment in history with me. If you enjoyed drifting through the slower, softer side of the past, and if these calm stories helped you relax, unwind, or fall asleep, consider supporting this little corner of the internet. A simple like helps more people find these peaceful videos. And subscribing to Quiet Boring Sleep means you'll always have a gentle place to return to whenever you need a calm voice and a quiet story. Take care, rest well, and I'll see you in the next quiet moment.